start our batter with 2 sticks of butter, softened at room temperature, and I'm just going to whip this up just a little bit. All right, to this, I'm going to add some nicely chopped, finely chopped almond paste, about 8 ounces. You can also grate it to get it incorporated easier, like with a rough grate. You just want to mix this just a little bit because we have to add sugar. Just want to get it so that it's just starting to break up in that butter. We're going to work on it some more, but let's get the sugar in here. We're going for about 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. There's going to be more sugar added with our Jello flavors, so this is probably a little lower sugar than I would usually use in more of like an almond cake. All right, now we're going to whip this up real well. All right, this is really well beaten, and you know, if you were to like see how I'm running the spatula, there you still see little bits of almond paste. That's eventually going to break down. But at this point, we can start moving on with our next steps. And that would be 4 eggs. And I've had these sitting out at room temperature. You've got such a nice, well-mixed butter. You don't want to put chilled eggs into this. It's going to seize up. So you're going to whip this after each egg addition. All right, that is 4 eggs. And you can see there's a nice yellow color to this. It's going to add a lot of richness to this cake. It's going to be very dense. And, you know, when you eat ice cream, particularly Spumoni ice cream, you know, we're talking a really rich, creamy flavor. So we're trying to get that in this cake. All right, now we're going to add the dry ingredients. And we're going to alternate between our dry and about 1/2 cup of milk. We're using 2% in this recipe. So here I've got sifted 2 cups of all-purpose flour with 1 teaspoon of baking powder. So you've got a little leavening and it's sifted and all nice and pretty in that bowl. And then I've got 1/2 cup of milk sitting aside here. So we're gonna start with our dry and we're gonna put in about 1/2. And give it just, we're gonna mix it just till it's incorporated. So that was the milk, 1/2 of the milk. We're gonna add the rest of the flour. Again, just only mix until it's just incorporated. You wanna overload it. See here, I'm stopping. There's still more to incorporate, but I don't wanna overwork it, and I think the milk will help me get the rest of that in there. All right, this is where we get this cake into a Spumoni vibe. We're gonna take this batter and we're gonna divide it into 3 as evenly as possible. Although it's not perfect, no big deal. Okay. There's my 3rd right here. So, Spumoni typically is, you got a chocolate vanilla ice cream mixed with a cherry ice cream and a pistachio ice cream. So we're going to turn one of these into pistachio, one of these into cherry, and one of these into chocolate. And Jello is going to help us. So this is a double fudge Jello pudding. And I'm going to use about 1/2 of the bag. And I have my milk nearby in case things get really dry. I'm just going to add a splash of milk into this. It's about a tablespoon. To this, I'm adding 1/8 a cup of chopped slivered almonds. And I'm just going to mix that in by hand. All right, so that is our chocolate. So for the pistachio section, use pistachio pudding. And I would also suggest, I'd recommend doing, just like we did 1/8 of a cup of chopped slivered almonds for the chocolate, I would recommend chopping up an eighth of a cup of pistachios for this. I thought I had some in the pantry, and sure enough, they have disappeared. So we're not going to do that. We're going to rely on our Jello today. But for you guys at home, grab some pistachios. And I think it would just kick up this flavor even more. So we're going to do just a half a bag. And we've got our milk nearby. In case things get too stiff and we need to moisten things, which tends to happen when you add Jello pudding or gelatin in with batter. All right, we're going to scrape the sides and set this aside. If you want a deeper green color, you can always add some food coloring. All right, that's all mixed in. If you want to add your pistachios, you do it now. And if you want to add some green food coloring, you can do that now. All right, finally, we have the cherry layer. And this is fun, because we're first going to need cherry Jello. That little splash of milk. We'll get this mixed. Okay, once you've got that cherry Jello mixed in, you're going to do a splash of cherry brandy. It's a pretty healthy teaspoon. And I also have an eighth of a cup of chopped maraschino cherries. You could also use just candied cherries if you'd like, but you get the idea. There's always candied fruit mixed into your Spumoni ice cream, so. Oh yeah. Okay, I've had my oven going. It's at 325. It's a low temp oven because you're gonna cook this slower than other cakes. I have a 10-inch cake pan, and I've sprayed it with nonstick cooking spray. I've placed some parchment on the bottom, and I've sprayed that with nonstick cooking spray as well. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take our 3 batters, and we're going to just kind of dollop sporadically around. Let's get this in here. I've got a dollop or 2 of chocolate left. Just gonna keep going around. Don't be afraid to layer. So I have a little bit left. You're just going to keep going until you use all of it. All right, you've got all the flavors here, and what you're going to do is you're going to slam the sides and hit it on the table. And give it some shakes. Until you start flattening it out. Next thing you're going to do, I just want to do a little bit of marbling. Not too much. but a little bit. All right, now this is going to cook for 75 minutes. So that's about an hour and 15. And we're gonna put a toothpick at the center to make sure that it comes out clean. So grab a book, do laundry, help your kids with their math problems, because this is gonna be a slow process. Okay, there's our cake. This brings back the touch. I checked at the center with a toothpick and it came out clean. We're gonna let it sit at the cooling rack for about 5 to 7 minutes in the pan before I invert it out and cool it completely. We wanna cool it before we fill it with whipping cream, vanilla flavored whipping cream or Dream Whip, and serve it. This only took an hour. I know I said an hour 15 usually. If you use a smaller, sorry, my husband's getting over a cold there. If the cake is thicker, a smaller pan, it probably would take the hour 15. This is a 10-inch pan, so it's a little bit less high. All right, we're gonna let it cool. We'll invert it out and we'll fill it and frost it. So I've cut this cake in half. I've put, I'll show you. I cut it in half like that. And I've got some, you can do whipping cream, lightly sweetened with some vanilla. I've got some Dream Whip that I'm going to use. And, you know, you can fill a little bit more in the center so it kind of oozes out if you like. But there you are. So thank you for joining me on Fridays with Flora on a fun baking day on this really creative cake. Please subscribe, hit the button below, and you can keep up on all the really fun activities and creative projects that we have here at the homestead. Check out the blog, check out the shop. We're just trying to share ways to make your world lovelier one pixel at a time. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.